What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck with our good friend Bruce Feldman joining us. Bruce, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Good to be on with you guys.
Appreciate you taking a little time. It's I feel like every weekend it's been one or two games, mostly just one game and maybe 1.5 games that I get excited about on the college football slate. But holy cow, this is the weekend where it kind of gets cranked up, man. There's matchups all over the place, all over the country, all over the time slots. This is the best weekend of the season so far.
It is. I mean, obviously there was a ton of hype for week one because of it was Arch's big starting debut, when it was his team at Texas, going to play Ohio State, huge game. But to me, I love the matchup in Happy Valley. There's going to be a whiteout at Penn State. Oregon's going in there. Dante Moore and the offense has looked fantastic. They haven't really played anybody yet, though. And this is a real good test. You obviously have Georgia, Alabama. That's a huge one. There's just so many. It's a deep run of games. But for me, I'm really fascinated to see what happens in Happy Valley. And not to say that what happens in Georgia, Alabama doesn't have playoff ramifications. It certainly probably will. But, again, just because the other two teams, we've at least seen them play somebody good, and we've seen them have some adversity. Alabama didn't really deal with it great. Obviously, Georgia did. But in this case, what are we getting? Has Drew Aller taken a big step? What does Jim Knowles' defense looks like in Happy Valley? How does Dante Moore and a rebuilt offensive line handle all that? I can't wait to find that stuff out.
It's funny, Bruce, because you took me right to where I wanted to go when it comes to Penn State. The biggest difference to me in Penn State is Jim Knowles. What does it look like? How is it going there? What do you expect to see from Jim Knowles taking over this defense?
He's as good as there is as a defensive mind in college football. And if you look last year when they played, he was at Ohio State, obviously, when they played Oregon the first time, I think Oregon averaged well over 7 yards a play. They obviously won that game. The second meeting, they really got after the Ducks. The Ducks went from rushing for 150 or 60 yards to minus 20. And they averaged under 4 yards a play. And obviously Ohio State, really took it to them on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's really good. He also has a lot to work with. I mean, there are a bunch of freaky dudes on the Penn State defense. Zane Durant, I don't want to say he's Aaron Donald, but of all the guys who are going to get compared to Aaron Donald in college football right now, this would be that guy who's super explosive, kind of undersized, but plays in the right scheme. Denied Dennis Sutton is a menace. They always seem to have an elite edge rusher. He's that guy right now. And there's a bunch of other dudes around him. Tony Rojas can run as fast as any linebacker and gets after people, and I think you have some interesting matchups here because Kenyon Sadiq is probably one of the more unique chess pieces in college football. Obviously, we just had a great tight end at Georgia who's now playing for the Raiders and Brock Bowers. Sadiq is faster and more explosive. I don't know if he's I don't want to say as smooth as Bowers was. Bowers was just almost like a running back at times, but Sadiq dominates as an inline blocker at times. And you see what a matchup problem he is. And Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, is really good at doing that because, as impressive as Oregon's been, remember, they're best receiver supposedly coming into this year was Evan Stewart, and he got a knee injury in the summer and he can't go. So, it's just very interesting to watch how these things are kind of lining up. And I'm fascinated to see how the chess match of Knowles against Stein goes Saturday night.
Bruce, I had a chance a couple years ago. Was it last year or 2 years? It all runs together. But I had a chance to see the Texas State Championship game. I just happened to be in Dallas when that was going on, so I went and watched it. And that freshman receiver for Oregon, he looked crazy fast on a high school field, obviously. But he looks like he's faster than everybody they're playing so far. I know I haven't seen a ton of talented opposition, but I mean, I'm excited to see that kid on a big stage.
Yeah, he's really dynamic. I mean, they had at one point, and their old receivers coach, who's now with the Cowboys, Junior Adams, had, I think, 3 legit 5-star guys. Now, one of them ended up, flipping and going to Florida at the last second. But this kid is super explosive. And I think he's embraced the physicality piece of it pretty quickly in Eugene. So They're excited about him. They have a deep running back room. Like I think a lot of us expected Mekhi Hughes, the transfer from Tulane, to emerge as kind of, I don't want to say the bell cow because that's not really how Oregon plays, but just to be that feature guy. And it's been a bunch of other guys who are averaging like 11 yards a carry. But again, they haven't played anybody close to what they're going to see, and certainly nothing like that environment. Dante has looked fantastic. Everybody loves him, and I talked to coaches who faced them. We have a big story on The Athletic. It's kind of what we're hearing. That'll go up Friday, and I think so. You hear some of the people who've played him just kind of gush about what they see, but again, I think I'm not saying it's fool's gold, but I just think we need to see it against like a relevant like class of athlete and class. It's just I feel like they were just kind of toying with people so far. This will be a much different kind of test, and if they ace it the way they've aced everything else, we probably got a legit Heisman candidate in Eugene.
I kind of want to finish the conversation off with Penn State and Oregon on the two head coaches. James Franklin catches a lot of flack for their inability to knock off a top 5 team. That is challenging to do, but in Penn State, the expectation is that he should be able to do it, and people kind of view him as more recruiter than strategist or tactician. Dan Lanning appears to kind of be the total package when you think about head coach, not only a masterful recruiter, motivator, has the X's and O's from the defense side of the ball. Just talk about a compare and contrast both head coaches in this matchup.
Yeah, I think for a little while, James Franklin, did an amazing job at Vandy, right? He got him in the top 25 a couple of years. Then he really, I think he ramped it up after, Bill O'Brien had a really tough role in trying to get Penn State back off the scrap heap when he got it. And I think he did a really good job. He obviously beat Urban Meyer, that one time. And then they played in the Rose Bowl when he had Saquon and Trace McSorley. And I think, he had a big role in making Penn State kind of cool for kids wanting to go there. And they've recruited well and gotten all these guys. But it's just been one reason or another why they haven't been able to beat whoever is the top teams that they face, whether it's Ohio State or occasionally it's been Michigan. Before it was, it might have been somebody else. And I think that, I think he probably, I don't want to say he gets a bad rap for this, because I think he's one of the best coaches in college football. Because he consistently wins double-digit games, he consistently develops players, but it's been kind of figuring out the offense. Outside of when Joe Moorhead was there running the show, I feel like it's been kind of underwhelming, and they plug different, guys in, and for whatever reason, it has not worked. Now, Andy Kotelnicki he came from Kansas. I think he did a pretty good job there, but they didn't have, it was rare to see a team that had really good skill talent, but almost no receivers. They had Warren, they had the 2 elite running backs, and the receivers were like a non-factor in the game, for them. Now they've added 3 transfer portal guys who've all, been pretty impressive so far. And I think you're getting an element of contested catches. I think a lot of this has got to be on, if Drew Aller's the guy some people think he is as an NFL prospect, we need to see him go out and win a big game, and we need to see him thrive in that moment. Trace McSorley actually could do some, I know he wasn't a prototype NFL size guy, but he was a really good college quarterback. He obviously had Saquon. They had some really good receivers back then. You guys remember they're in the NFL now. And I just feel like they need to see that part of it. In terms of Lanning, you see a guy who seems to be in his sweet spot, learned under Kirby, learned under Saban, took a lot of different things from people. I think he's really confident in what he's doing. Whoever he's put on his coaching staff seems like they have been a good fit, whether it's finding Alik Terry to be the O-line guy after he had Adrian Clem, or plugging, Tosh Lupoy has looked good as a defensive coordinator here. Obviously went from Kenny Dillingham as the OC. He goes to be the head coach at Arizona State. He grabs Will Stein. Will Stein has been as good a play caller, honestly, in college football as there's been the last couple of years. So Dan Lanning's got it right now, but I don't think, I think for people to look at it and go, James Franklin can't win big games. I don't buy that. I think he hasn't shown that he can consistently do it. but we've seen at times, but now all of a sudden it's been like one thing or the other. I don't want to say there's no excuses for it if they don't win this game on Saturday night, but I think everything points in the direction they should win this game based on, the experience they have, the home field environment. I think everything they that's lined up for them. If I was a Penn State fan and they don't win, I'd really be resigned to maybe this is not going to work. But you can't put everything on one game. But we have enough of a track record where you can start to be a little skeptical.
Well, I mean, Aller's going to get all the credit or all the blame no matter what happens, because that seems to be that's the sport on social media. I remember the Ohio State game last year. I mean, he throws a fade ball that should be a touchdown. And the receiver doesn't fight for it. It gets ripped out of his hands and kind of changed the whole dynamic of that entire game. And you mentioned the lack of receivers last year. They didn't have any. Like that's why they're trying to generate offense and putting Warren as a wildcat quarterback. Just whatever we got to do. He's the best playmaker we have. Let's just try and put the ball in his hands. So I have not watched them yet this year. I'm anxious to see what this new receiving core looks like and see what Aller does on a big stage to kind of get the taste of that last game we all saw him in on the big stage last year. Get that taste out of their mouth. We've got two other ones I want to hit you on because LSU Ole Miss is going to be a great matchup too. But Bama, Georgia doesn't lose at home. And then you've got Bama, who I don't know, has it calmed down a little bit? I think with the quarterback playing better, I think that's taken a little bit of the heat off of DeBoer, but that's still, I feel like a fan base in Tuscaloosa sitting on the edge of their seat waiting to see something they don't like.
Yeah, I feel like the last time Georgia lost at home on a night game there in Athens, I worked at ESPN. Bucky was playing DB in the NFL, and you were probably at App State or in Louisiana playing quarterback. It's been a long time. Yeah. The things that I want to see in this game is Jam Miller's going to get back. That's the Alabama's best running back. Can he give them a run game to really complement what you have in Ty Simpson, who's played fantastic? Right. Mm-hmm. Both receivers have been really good. Jeremy Bernard has really stepped up to be the other guy with the dynamic Ryan Williams. The offensive line has been very inconsistent. Right. And I think from a big picture sense, Ryan Grubb is a very good offensive mind. We saw he was with Kalen DeBoer when they had Penix at Washington. They played for the national title. Really dynamic offense that had three elite receivers with a great quarterback. You wonder, like, how committed does he want to be to running the football? That was kind of the knock with him with Mike McDonald last year in Seattle when he was the OC there. Will they do that against Georgia? Now, we saw Tennessee attack them like a couple weeks ago in Knoxville. Chris Brazzell went off against them, and I think Georgia is vulnerable to some of the same stuff that Alabama can attack them with. By the way, Kalen DeBoer off a bye week. He's won a lot of games, including his last 5 games, and 4 of them have been against ranked opponents. So I feel like they will have some stuff up their sleeve. It also helps. It really helps the Tide. They not only get Jam Miller back, they get Tim Keenan, who's probably their best D lineman. He's definitely their best leader on defense. He's missed most of the season. He probably could have played last week, but he's ready to go. I think that helps them because, when you look at Georgia, I thought Gunnar Stockton aced the first big test. He rallied them. And, the people I talked to inside the Georgia program were very confident in him before the game. And I think he backed up that confidence of why they're confident in him. I still don't think this is the Georgia caliber team that we saw that annihilated TCU and SoFi for the national title game or was winning national titles. I think they're really good. I don't know if I buy that they are at that level where they are the class of the SEC. I think they're one of the best teams in the SEC, but I don't know if I think look at them and go, oh yeah, this is a team that to me is one that you check the box off that they're the team to beat. I think they have flaws just like, the other maybe 4 best teams in the SEC. And I would include Alabama in that group right now.
It's funny when you talk about it, because to me, you talk about Kalen DeBoer being so good off bye weeks and those things. It's still hard to look at Alabama and not compare them to what Alabama looked like under Saban. And I'm just talking about talent or whatever, but I'll talk about discipline and attention to detail and those things. knowing what you know about Kalen DeBoer, how different is this program than the program that Nick Saban ran?
I think it's very different. I mean, I don't know how to say it beyond like this. Kalen DeBoer is a genuinely nice guy. And I think there's one part that I think was frustrating if you watched them play Florida State was the fight was not there. You know, I mean,
they got pushed around. The effort wasn't there either.
The effort was not there. That was the part that was like, Florida State looked hungrier. They looked like they were tougher. And I don't know, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that goes on Kalen DeBoer as much as it goes on any players. I mean, I know what you guys, you know, what you guys, you know, do, you know, occupation wise is, you know, evaluate players and how much they love football, how tough are they, all those intangible things. But at the end of the day, that, you know, that's on the coach as much as anything. Yeah. And the player. And so, you know, there's some really good players in there. And I remember you could see bits and pieces where it's like, why did this guy give up on this play? I thought this guy's better than this. You know, this doesn't seem like this guy. And you just kind of wonder, okay, what happened there? And I think only the people inside the program really know the answer to those things. But it is a long season. We learned that from Ohio State last year, if we didn't already know it. And I think if you're Alabama, if you're Kalen DeBoer, if you're Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator, I think it's like, hey, you guys got embarrassed by Diego Pavia and Vandy last year. You gave up 40 points. Now, some of those players probably were not the same players in different roles. You know, like honestly, guys, like there's a bunch of guys in the secondary who came from like where DJ lives, right? There's a bunch of like either Orange County or San Diego kids who are really talented, who it's like, okay, now are you guys ready to be those guys? Because obviously they lost, you know, a bunch of corners and a great safety, some to the NFL, and obviously Caleb Downs went to Ohio State. But I felt like they lost a lot of key pieces, and it's you wonder who's going to step up and take ownership inside the locker room of that, because obviously there's some accountability issues. This is a good test. If you thought Florida State was going to manhandle you, what do you think Georgia's going to do? What do you think Kirby Smart wants to do? So, like, I'm interested to see how does Kalen DeBoer make sure that doesn't happen Saturday night in Athens?
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one, man. I want to get to this third game, and I want to connect it to the one we just talked about. Bruce, just because, you know, we'll catch up as we get closer to the draft, and I'll get a chance to jump in on these guys, as will Bucky. But if I was just going to ask you, these four teams playing in these two games, Bama, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. Who is, I'll just ask you for 1 and 4. We don't have to worry about 2 and 3. Who is the most talent, not the best team, just the most talent. Who's the most talented of those four teams, and who's the least talented of those four teams?
I would say probably Ole Miss is the least talented of those teams. You know, Ole Miss lost a lot of good players on the defense last year. Lost a terrific receiver who's, you know, now with the Chargers, and obviously lost a terrific quarterback who's now with the Giants.
And their whole D-line. That all got picked.
I mean, like Walter Nolan, you go down the list. They lost really good players. They have like a couple of guys back in the front seven who I think were good players. But I feel like Ole Miss is probably, and shouldn't be shocking. Like, you know, typically that would be the least of those groups. You know, LSU is the wild card of this group because they have a ton of speed. They could put a track team out with just their receiver room. I love some of the additions they have in the portal. Mansour Delane is a great college cornerback in how he plays.
Great name too.
It is. Came from Virginia Tech, has been fantastic addition. I think Blake Baker, the defense coordinator, has done a really good job. I feel like they are playing a lot of confidence on that side of the ball. You got Whit Weeks and the Weeks brothers.
There's 9 of them.
It feels like it.
I swear I watched one get hurt and one get kicked out, and there was another one just waiting in the wings. I'm like, how many of these dudes are there?
I know they're a little bit like the old Schwarzenegger movie where it's the Terminator, where one part comes off and they just kind of regenerate. It looks a little different because I watched the Netflix thing on them. They don't like Whit looks a certain way. The youngest brother really doesn't look like them as much, but it's just they have all the same heart. And I think there's a confidence there. There's also Harold Perkins, who is like, I don't know if this is Harold Perkins 3.0 because he was a fantastic playmaker as a true freshman, and then they kind of struggled to figure out how to use him. And I don't know if he was lost in there a little bit. I don't know what happened, but you watched him earlier this year and he is making a lot of plays because he is so twitchy, and is kind of also a unique chess piece for them. I think the part that is puzzling about LSU is, as I said, ton of speed at receiver. You got Garrett Nussmeier, who I know he's been a little banged up, but he's as good a quarterback as there is in college football, I think. But you wonder, how committed are they to the run game? It's like, can they run the football or will they run the football? Started to become like two different questions. They had to replace 4 starters on the O-line, including Will Campbell. I think all 4 of those linemen, by the way, it's not just they lost them. Those guys are all like the Senior Bowl. Those are like pretty good players. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty about LSU. Even the win they had, which I thought was a really good looking win week 1, because they went to Clemson and beat a team with a lot of dudes on it. But Clemson doesn't look very good right now. You know, so that, to me, they're the wild card. My default answer to this in a long-winded way would be Georgia's the most talented team, because I think they have more guys that are ready in the front 7 than Alabama does. But I don't know about that. I mean, the answer to that probably is Texas has better guys on the defense than any of them do. Yeah. But I know Texas isn't in this conversation for this point. But I don't know. Like, I feel like of those 4 teams, the one I have the most confidence in quarterback is probably Nussmeier.
Correct. I agree with that.
The one I have the most confidence in the trenches probably is Georgia. And then, I honestly, I would take the 2 receivers Alabama has over anybody Georgia has. I know, like, Branch is a dangerous return guy and gadget guy, but I feel like Ryan Williams is different. I see what Jeremy Bernard is doing. I feel like Jeremy Bernard is like a go-to guy. And I think Ty Simpson, cool story. I think he's playing with a ton of confidence. And you're seeing a guy who's much better athlete than people gave him credit for. And he could of this weekend in the SEC of these 4 teams, I think he has a chance to be the guy people come away talking about going, whoa, he's way better than we thought.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'll tell you what's interesting to me is watching Brian Kelly down at LSU after watching him for years at Notre Dame. And it's just me, and I'm a Brian Kelly fan, but it just doesn't seem like a great mesh in terms of personality and players and program and those things. Like 30,000 foot view, like what is that connection like between BK, the football program, and the players? Because it just doesn't seem like it's a great fit.
Yeah, last year I did a story with my colleague Ralph Russo about the fit, because he's obviously a terrific coach. You don't do what he did for as long as he did at Notre Dame if you're not really good, in addition to the other jobs he's had and done well at. But, I don't want to put it as bluntly as this, but LSU, you're coaching in the Deep South, you're coaching different kinds of kids than you're getting at Notre Dame. And I think how he's connected to them or not, one of the people we talked to for that story was his former starting center at LSU, who'd been, he was a holdover from the old staff. And, he started for a couple of years for Brian Kelly, and he was like, I just didn't have any personal relationship with him. Like, this guy was on the record just basically talking about that. Like, he'd say hi to me and that's it. But it wasn't like you felt like you had any connection to him. And I think one of the mistakes Brian Kelly made early on was the staff he put together. Like, Corey Raymond has produced as many DBs probably for the NFL in the last, decade as anybody in college football. He clearly knows what he's doing. They got rid of him. They ended up bringing him back, because they were crazy for LSU to be bad in the secondary. They were really bad in the secondary, so they brought him back. Blake Baker, Louisiana guy. He was the linebacker coach on the old Ogeron staff. He's now the defensive coordinator. That was a really good move. I think a lot of those things is, how do you supplement it to make it fit? Sometimes I feel like LSU, I don't want to say they're winning in spite of Brian Kelly, but it is a weird fit, everything there. I think it helps that he has a really experienced quarterback who wants to be there. We know that because Nussmeier was one of the rare guys who could have left when he waited behind Jaden Daniels and waited. And, it's like he's a leader there. I think they probably have good leaders in the locker room. Sure seems like Whit Weeks is one of them, and I think But the fit is weird, no doubt. And I know this, like the only thing the three guys he followed as head coaches there, Nick Saban, Les Miles, and Ed Orgeron, the only thing they have in common is they all won national titles in their first 4 years at LSU. Mm-hmm. It's year four. They spent like 3 times as much money on their roster as they did the year before. So clearly they're invested. Go at least be a playoff team. I don't think they have to like win the national title to keep his job. But I think given the experience, given who your quarterback is and his experience, I think you got to prove it and be a playoff team. I think there's really no excuses for not. And there's no excuses for LSU not to be able to run the ball better than it's doing right now.
Oh, that's great stuff, Bruce. Last one, then I'm going to let you run here. You've been gracious with your time as always. But you mentioned, that job likely isn't going to come open. The one that is looking like it could come open is Florida. We'll see unless Napier can really recover against just a brutal schedule that they have. But not just that job, the other jobs that potentially could become available after last year was such a light movement year. It looks like we could see more movement this year. So just early on for candidates that maybe are a little off the radar, I'd love to know, can you give me a couple names, non-Power 4 coaches that you think have an opportunity to ascend and be good, Power 4 guys?
Yeah, there's already three Power 4 jobs that are open. Obviously, Mike Gundy got blown out of Oklahoma State this week, and you had Deshaun Foster at UCLA. You had Virginia Tech and Brent Pry. They fired
Stanford's open too.
Yeah, that's right. Stanford is open, and go work for Andrew Luck and try to get players in academically, right? So, and play in a league that, it's just the worst geographical fit. But that's 4 jobs. There will be more. I think what's different this year for Billy Napier than was last year is his AD, Scott Strickland. Like last year, he was on a lot of thin ice. Well, what happened between this year and last year, in addition to Billy Napier going on a run at the end of the year, was the basketball coach he hired, Todd Golden, won a national title. So all of a sudden now Scott Strickland's kind of separated a little bit from if this football coach gets fired, I may lose my job too. That's not going to happen. At least the latter's not. So the guys I think to keep an eye on, especially maybe watch Virginia Tech, that job is, I think there's 4 or 5 very good Group of 5 head coaches out there. One of them is John Sumrall. He is coached a lot in the SEC. Really good coach. I think John Sumrall would win anywhere. Anybody who's talked to him, and I know a lot of your brethren who do scouting and probably talked to John Sumrall a lot. He's just got it. He's super sharp. He's at Tulane. Did a really good job. First at Troy and then there. If Lane ever left Ole Miss, which if the Florida job comes open, who knows how that plays out, right? But I could see Sumrall at Ole Miss. I could see him at Auburn. He's from Alabama. He's a guy that I think will be in much demand. Ryan Silverfield just beat Arkansas. He's the head coach at Memphis. Has done a very good job there. Consistently has won. The one thing that's kind of like a quirky thing, with him in this dynamic is Virginia Tech's open. Virginia Tech hired Justin Fuente to replace Frank Beamer. Did a pretty good job at the beginning, then really tailed off. They hired him from Memphis. I don't know if they would go, we can't hire another Memphis coach. I don't think he and Ryan Silverfield are very similar in any way, but they both have coached at Memphis, and maybe that'll be a question mark. Then Bob Chesney, who's at James Madison, who's at Holy Cross, won a lot of games, been a long time head coach, even though he's in his mid-40s. He's one to watch. Alex Golish, who is a Heupel protege, who's at USF. He's got a winning record. It's not like he has an amazing record in 3 years, but he did beat Florida this year. He blew out Boise State, and they were like 4-29 at USF before he showed up. The other thing that's worth noting with him is, of all the guys I mentioned, he's the only one who worked at Oklahoma State before. He was a GA for Gundy in like 2008. So he does have a connection. He runs the warp speed offense. He's a good coach. And then the other guy I would put in there is Charles Huff, who's now at Southern Miss, won 10 games last year at Marshall. I mean, I could see Virginia Tech being tempted by him because he went to college in that state. He's from Maryland. He coached for James Franklin at Penn State. He coached for Saban at Alabama. He knows what he's doing. So those guys are the ones I think that are the most, I would say, upwardly mobile in terms of like, I think maybe all of them, if not, half of them will probably end up at bigger jobs come this winter. And then you have a cluster of really good offensive coordinators who I think will get long looks, certainly at the Oklahoma State job. I don't know what UCLA is going to do, because UCLA is a unique kind of mess. And I think that they have to be careful hiring somebody who's never been a head coach after what just happened with Deshaun Foster. He just seemed like he was really spinning his wheels there, and you don't have a ton of support inside the athletic program there.
Well, free advice, if Will Stein's listening, you have a better job as the offensive coordinator at Oregon than being the head coach at UCLA. So I would not jump at that one. I would hold off and see what else is out there till they get stuff figured out there in Westwood. Hey, Bruce, you're the best, buddy. We kept you a little long. We appreciate your time. We look forward to doing this again soon, man.
Always a pleasure, guys. Good seeing you.
All right, Buck. Great to have our buddy Bruce Feldman. If you don't know Bruce, then you probably aren't watching a lot of college football, but you'll see him on Fox each and every Saturday. Also does incredible work at The Athletic. Has a great article up on Ryan Williams, by the way. Just read that this morning. The receiver we were talking about from Alabama, and kind of his upbringing and some of the adversity that he's faced. But Bruce is dialed in as anybody, and always love it when we get a chance to have him on.
Yeah, no, look, he knows a lot about everything in the college football landscape. And it was great to have his insights, not only on the things that are happening on the field, but man, the coaching stuff. It's such a fascinating time when you think about college football, the jobs that are available, but dealing with the new landscape. You know what I'm saying? The portal, the money, the boosters, revenue share, whatever. Like I say now it's more challenging than ever to be ahead of a program. There's a whole lot more than ball.
Yep. You better have hopefully a general manager that you can partner with that you can trust, that can take a lot of that stuff off of your plate. But anyways, we'll have Bruce on again, try and get him on about once a month. Look forward to those conversations. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. Tomorrow we will preview some of the big NFL weekend games we have in front of us. We'll check that out tomorrow right here on Move the Sticks.